Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in for another one of our Facebook Live virtual author events. Tonight, I'm very excited to be joined by T. Jefferson Parker and Glen Erik Hamilton. I was just joking that their names were a lot for me to type. So we've got both of you coming from Southern California, right?
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks for joining us. I'll do bios and then get to questions. So a native of Seattle, Glen Erik Hamilton grew up aboard a sailboat and spent his youth finding trouble around the marinas and commercial docks and islands of the Pacific Northwest. He now lives in Burbank, California with his family, punctuated by frequent visits to his hometown to soak up the rain. He is here today to talk about a new Van Shaw book, A Dangerous Breed. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks. Thanks for being here. So T. Jefferson Parker is the author of numerous novels and short stories, the winner of 3 Edgar Awards, and the recipient of the Los Angeles Times Book Prize for Best Mystery. Before becoming a full-time novelist, he was an award-winning reporter. He is here to talk about the new Roland Ford book, Then She Vanished, which is out today, hot off the presses. Congratulations, and thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
So many of you have watched these talks before and know that if you put questions in the comments, I will try to get to them on the latter part of the chat. I'm going to be multitasking everything today, so there's no one else in the background, it's just me. So if it takes me a second to get to your question, I will get to it. I will still try to be engaged in the chat and do all the things. So we'll see how that goes. I think we're expecting book plates from both these gentlemen. We might already have Glen's, and Jeff's are on the way. So if you order copies of the book, we'll make sure to get those to you. So how are you both?
Things are good. Things are good here. These are very strange times for all of us, and we're kind of picking our way through one day at a time here. But everything's good here. My family's healthy and strong, and my immediate, family and friends have been lucky, and I have too. So one day at a time, I guess. But okay, it's going well.
How about you, Glen?
Yeah, we've been fortunate as well. We haven't been hit directly by the virus. We've been largely sequestered because of work and health reasons since early on, since February, and really it's a matter of making sure everybody gets their own personal space so we don't live on top of one another. So.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. My husband is a musician, and we're both musicians, but he's a musician. Anyway, we have a music studio behind that house, and I will forever be grateful that we have that second space so that we're also not on top of one another the whole time. It's unusual for us to both be home. So let's start with you, Glen. Why don't you give me a rundown, an elevator pitch, if you will, of A Dangerous Breed?
Sure. Dangerous Breed is the 5th in the series of Van Shaw novels. Bit of introduction on Van. Van's an unusual cat. He was raised by his grandfather, who was a career criminal, a professional thief. And so he grew up with sort of a skewed moral compass. And in the course of the books, he returns after being in the military for many years to Seattle, re-engages with his life. He's no longer the young, brash thief that he used to be, but he has a lot of skills that bend that direction and a lot of friends that bend that direction. And a lot of the series is him walking that line between the light and the dark and finding his purpose along the way. And in A Dangerous Breed, it's probably the most personal of the books I think I've written about Van. He's been home for a couple of years because the time is compressed really in the first few books of it's not one per year. And he finds a thread basically to find information about his mother, who had passed away when he was 6 years old. And so he barely knew her, never knew who his father was. His mother never revealed that to any member of the family or anyone, so far as Van knows. Decides that, well, okay, he's back for a while. He can re-engage with this. It's not too painful. He can find out a little more about who his mom was, what she was doing, hear from some friends who knew her in her high school years and so forth, because she became pregnant at 16. And follows that thread and finds some clues as to who, in fact, his father might be. This being a thriller, it's very much a case of be careful what you wish for. The person in question that he's tracking down is not the sort of person you should go looking for. And if in fact is the sort of person you find, you should very quickly run the other direction and hope they never had any hint that you were looking for them. And so a lot of the story is about nature versus nurture. Is Van's comfort with violence and maybe even is being drawn to action and violence part of his nature inherently? Is that simply who he is? And it's a lot of it's also about learning who our parents are as people rather than just who they are to us.
Excellent. Jeff, same question.
Yeah. I like Van Shaw, Erik. Glen, he's a cool character. Good job on him.
Thank you.
Yeah, very interesting. My book is called Then She Vanished, and it's the fourth novel featuring my private investigator, Roland Ford is his name, and he lives and works north of San Diego, same town where I live here, Fallbrook, California. This book, like the other Roland Ford PI books, opens in a very, very traditional, conventional way. In this book, Roland is approached by a man that he knew in Iraq. They fought together, or they fought in the Battle of Fallujah, and not on the same unit. They didn't know each other, but they were there at the same time. And this man, since Fallujah, has gone on to become the California State Assemblyman in Roland's district. So his name is Dalton Strait. And Dalton comes to Roland in his office one day with the distressing news that Dalton's wife has vanished. She's disappeared. The car's gone and her purse is gone, and that's all they know. She's not answering the phone, obviously. She's not in touch. She's gone. She's been gone for 2 days. And so Dalton Strait hires Roland to find his wife. The police are not particularly involved yet. They want to wait a little longer before they start action on finding Natalie. So Roland begins early, though. He's a tenacious 40-ish PI, former cop, former Marine, tough man, but a kindly soul, really. And he gets on the case real quickly. And because it's a thriller, and because things in thrillers have to happen quickly and interestingly and surprisingly, this apparently kind of simple missing persons story becomes hugely complicated very early. And we realize that we're up against much more than just a runaway disgruntled person. So that's kind of a thumbnail sketch of Then She Vanished.
It sounds great. And I have to say, both of your characters are so fun because they're multifaceted with their backgrounds too. They're great characters. Speaking of that, they both have military backgrounds at some point. So what drew you to that, and how much research do you have to do to fulfill the character's needs on that end?
Sure. Jeff, do you want?
Oh, thank you. I am not a serviceman myself. My father was in the Air Force. But I don't come from a military family, really. I did not serve. I missed the draft for Vietnam because my lottery number was so low or so high. As I look around me since 9/11, it seems like everybody in America's been at war for so long. And when it was time for me to create Roland Ford, a hero, if you will, a character who's a hero, I wanted to put him in the military at some point because so many of us Americans have been just that. Also, because I live and work here in Fallbrook, and Roland does, I mean, I see a lot of Marines because Fallbrook abuts Camp Pendleton. So I've met and talked to and interviewed a lot of Marines just around town, if you will. And I wanted to make Roland a representative person, a representative American. And because we've been at war for so long, so many places, I felt obligated to give Roland a military background, because to me, that is, at this point, the young American background. So I think I would have been remiss to create a character his age with no military experience at all. It would seem like I was missing something.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. How about you, Glen?
Yeah, for Van, I sort of backed into the military aspects of his background because I wanted him to break away from the criminal life at 18. He had a violent falling out with his grandfather, and being 18, having no money, having no prospects, but being physically very capable, very disciplined, it seemed natural that he would go into the Army, kind of thinking of it as a temporary thing of just a place to be and to make some money not stealing and do this. And to his surprise, found that he was very good at it, in fact. And in researching it, I was interviewing a friend of mine who was former Special Forces, and he described the Rangers, the Army Rangers, as, to clean up the language a little, knocking down doors and blowing stuff up. And I thought, well, that's exactly who Van would be at age 19. That's exactly what would draw him, that kind of light infantry raiding background. And so I had him become a veteran of the 75th Ranger Regiment, where he served for the better part of 10 years. That turned out to be a godsend from a fictional standpoint, because the credo for special operations is very strict, very moral, very by the rules, which is a stark contrast to the way he was raised. Both very disciplined, but of course, one very dark and one very light. And so consequently, that sets up a moral quandary for him, and a different way of thinking about crime than he would normally have, and about tactics that he would normally have.
So you obviously get to know your characters well as you write them. Is there ever a moment when you're writing where the character says, nope, that's not what I'm going to do?
Absolutely.
Go ahead,
Yes. Yeah. There's definitely times where I'll write something and Van will sort of kick at what I'm trying to get him to say or something like that. And I'll realize, no, I'm putting my words in his mouth. This is not how a 30-year-old army vet and tough guy would talk. This is me from liberal Seattle talking. It's a little different along the way. Van's a very laissez-faire, fairly socially conscious guy, but he's going to have a different approach to it than I am, or he's going to take different approaches to problems that I'll take. Usually a lot more direct. Jeff?
Yeah. Every once in a while, a character in a book that I'm writing will refuse to do what I want him or her to do, and I'll write the scene or the passage, and it will become just so abrasively, so painful to read it. I know that something's wrong. And what it turns out, inevitably, the character is always right. They know what they would do and how they would talk and what they would say. And I can't shoulder them into doing something that they wouldn't normally do. And that's really kind of cool, when you have your characters, hatched and imagined to the point where they will correct you. It's kind of nice. It's kind of nice to have that guidance, and it teaches you to pay attention as the author to your characters. And if I want to make my characters do something and I don't get any protest, then fine, I've made the right choice. And if I get one of those passages that just grates on me when I read it, I know that I have misplayed that character somehow, and they are warning me from the page to look again.
So when that happens, you just backtrack to a point that feels right, and then you have to kind of change the plot, or how do you fix that?
Yeah. I mean, you do. You have to literally. I mean, I literally will just ride the delete key, watch the lines disappear because it's wrong, and it's wrong. Yeah. And sometimes if it's borderline, I might save it, put it at the end of the file, and hang on to it in case I might need it. But basically, if it's wrong, it's wrong. And that's how I fix everything. Authors fix everything. You go backwards from that moment, and you try to find other examples where that is the case. Luckily, after 35 years of doing this, and in 26 books now, as of today, I'm pretty good at smelling the smelling out the problem. Hemingway's crap detector. I'm pretty good at that, and I can sense that in my own work pretty loudly and pretty clearly early. So I don't find myself with protracted problems regarding character motivation in that way. When they come up, I try to nip them in the bud, self-correct, and then move forward.
Yeah. In which ways do you see yourself like Roland or like Van?
Glen?
Jeff, do you want to take this one first?
What way do I see myself like Roland? Roland
or differ?
We're very different characters, we're different in a million ways. I mean, he's younger, bigger, stronger, faster, military guy, former police, sheriffs. He's in a far different field of work than I'm in. Some of his interior must come from me, obviously. I mean, to me, and anytime I write a protagonist, in a novel, that protagonist is my version of a hero in some way, a contemporary hero. I try to create them. And so, Roland is really kind of a composite sketch of what I think currently heroic values are. And I could never cast myself as a hero, but I can gather those qualities from other characters, people I know, characters in books, whatever, and I can give Roland those attributes and create him that way. So we're different people, but we must have some overlap, or he wouldn't have come out of me.
Fair enough. How about you, Glenn?
Yeah, like Jeff's, and I think like most authors, there's attributes of your character that you would like to have yourself, whether it's being younger, tougher, stronger along the way, or just bolder. Just being able to come up with the quip or the comeback as quickly as possible. We'd all like to be able to do that. I think though that there's certain aspects of Van that are very definitely mine. Our senses of humor are very similar. Van's pretty dry, and I often tend to be as well. And the attitudes are often the same too. We both have a healthy distrust of authority, and I do say healthy distrust of authority. In Van's case, it's a little maybe skewed darker, but nevertheless, he's always suspicious of somebody in power or wanting to stay in power or telling him what the right thing to do is. He'll tend to question that, and I do too. That said, one of the fun aspects of knowing a character really well is getting to live inside a head that's not quite yours, right? That thinks either a little differently, a little more clearly, or is just a little skewed in the wrong direction, and that can be fun. It's a little like playing a villain on stage, right? You get to live in those shoes for a little while.
And you get to take all the time you need to write that perfect quip, whereas in real life, you know, 15 minutes later, you think of it.
That's right.
That's what I do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we all do.
Yeah. Oh, darn, I should have said that. Yeah.
So you've written this character, each of you, for several books now. Do you have a method for keeping backstories and other characters straight, or do you just know everyone in your head?
Oh, it's funny you mentioned that, because I'm at the point now with 5 books, almost 6 books written. I'm finishing up the 6th one in the next couple months, that I'm going to need to make myself a Bible. I'm going to need to go back and remind myself, what does Hollis drive and what year was his boat built? And, because that can eat up a lot of time to go, I'll just note it down on the side and go look it up later. But I've got to go back and read my own books, which can be a harrowing thing for almost any author, and start noting these things down and reminding myself, how many kids does the lieutenant have? That sort of thing for some of my yeah.
Because the readers will call you on it if you get it wrong.
Yeah, they will spot things. If I don't know if Jeff, if you write lists, but if I don't know it, I'll just sort of make it up and keep going along the way, and then I have to remember to go back and double check that fact later. And if I miss that, I will get called on it. There's no question.
Yeah, I'm the same way. After doing this for so many years, I finally learned to keep I guess a mini Bible, you might call it, from as soon as I write the first page of the new book, whatever it might be, I go to the end of the file and and I call it biographies, and it's just the biographical data about everybody who's in the story at the time. How old they are, when they were born, right down to the day. Color of eyes, hair, physical description, anything about them that I need to know, because as you were saying, there are just voluminous facts, fictional facts about these characters and stuff, and there's a lot of them. When you get 4 or 5 books in, there's a lot to keep track of. So I try to keep a running log called biographies and stay up to date with my people. I have a good friend who's a well-known best-selling thriller writer who realized 15 books in that he didn't really know exactly how old his hero was. And I sympathize with him for having to go back and try to answer that. So I try to be methodical about it and keep a list of attributes and things that I need to know about these guys.
And it's cumulative too, because if you don't want to always mention the same traits every time you bring back a recurring character. You don't always want to say, well, they had prematurely white hair and a mustache and rimless glasses, right?
Yeah.
If you do that every time, readers just get incredibly bored. You want to bring out different aspects of their character, or learn new things about them, or have them grow. And so it just, the volume of information, as Jeff said, it's pretty substantial over time.
Yeah, it's embarrassing to go over your own manuscript before you send it in and realize that you changed the color of someone's eyes halfway through. I've done that,
Or forgot they were married. I did that
in the biography.
It's just like, oh yeah, that character was married, were they?
Yeah.
We've done a lot of these virtual events now since March, and much more moderating and interviewing than I ever did in person at the store. And it's fascinating to me how many people don't have notes. Like, they say they just know their characters and it's like a family. And I'm like, oh, I would never have any way to keep all of that straight. There's no way. But anyway, yeah, no way. Oh, let me do this really quickly. So if you're just joining us, tuning in late, and you'd like to see the beginning of this video, if you wait until the end, Facebook will, it'll be there for you to watch from the beginning in the videos tab of Murder by the Book. Also, give me about a day or two and I'll get it uploaded to YouTube, where it'll be shareable for anyone who doesn't even have a Facebook account. So there's that. Also, if you're interested in ordering the books, I've dropped a link in the comments that'll take you to more information about both, as well as the first books in each of these series if you want to try those. So both of you write series characters. Jeff, you've written several over the years: Mercy Rayburn, Charlie Hood. Are we going to be sticking with these guys for a while?
Well, I've written 4 of these Roland Ford novels, and I'm going to take a break next year. I'm working on a coming of age story set in Laguna Beach in 1968. I don't have a title for it yet. It's about an old boy, a young man. He's on the cusp of becoming a man, looking for his older teenage sister, who's sort of lost in Laguna, suddenly vanished, and in the 68 world of psychedelic drugs and rock and roll and protests and free love and all that. And so this young man has to track down his missing sister through that world. And I'm working on that now, and that'll be my book for 2021.
Right. Any plans to return to Roland after that?
We'll see. I might.
Awesome. How about you, Glenn?
Yeah, this will be the 6th Van Shaw I've written, and I've only written Van Shaw novels. I'm going to take a run at a standalone next. I've got an idea for it. I'm pretty excited about. I'm especially excited about this Van book first. So I've got a few months of work, counting rewrites, to do on that first. But I'm excited enough by the standalone that it might be worth taking the year to work on that rather than Van number 7 just yet.
So here's my ever-present, thinly veiled outline or pantser question. What's your process for keeping the books suspenseful throughout?
Okay. Well, to sort of state the obvious, keeping it suspenseful throughout, ideally you're always raising questions as you're answering them. As your character is answering questions, that's just leading to more questions, bigger questions, maybe more danger, maybe more action, ideally, and just escalating stakes so that it's just ramping up throughout along the way. I like to play a lot with structure. So I will typically have A plot, B plot, maybe a C plot. I don't necessarily outline, but I usually have a pretty good idea of events that have to happen in each of those and how they interweave. That is mostly in my head, but also in Post-it notes and various other scattered things throughout, throughout the house. And so usually if one plot starts to ramp down, another one is ramping up along the way, right? So that there might be a resolution to a violent problem or an action problem at the same time that a personal problem is coming to a head, And so that's what works for me, but it's I'm probably more plotter than pantser, but it's sort of like, I think of it as setting milestones out on a trip where I'm going to visit the Grand Canyon, and I'm going to hit Wichita, and I'm going to go to Houston to visit Murder by the Book, and I'm going to go to St. Louis. And between those, I can wander around and take in the roadside attractions as much as I like, so long as I get those there in a reasonable amount of time.
Gotcha. How about you, Jeff?
Good. I got a writer friend who once told me that to him, writing a novel was kind of like taking the vacation of your life, and no expense was too much. You know, you can do whatever you want, whenever you want, and make it exciting. You know, to the question, I think for me, I always outline because publishers want outlines, and sometimes it's just a page and a half. It's kind of a synopsis, you know, very, very brief and very general. Sometimes it's detail. I've written outlines that are 90 single-spaced pages. I mean, I've written huge outlines, and I've written, you know, page and a half double-spaced outlines that have worked also. So for me, I generally have, I always reach a point when I'm beginning a book, before I've begun the book, I'll reach a point finally where I know enough about the characters and enough about the story and enough about the tone that I'm after that I can begin writing it. And once I've begun writing the story, then, you know, whatever outline or presuppositions that I have that are working in the story, I'll adhere to. But as soon as I get in any kind of trouble or I feel that things aren't working, then I'll jettison that part of the outline and think up something better. You know, I think the secret to outlining is being aware that you can always make them better, you know, and not that you're not locked into an outline simply because you've written it. So I've written both ways. I kind of make things up as I go along with that outline kind of haunting me from the background. At times I have gotten stuck in books and I've referred to my own outlines and found wonderful answers there. And other times I've gotten stuck in my books and referred to my outlines and found nothing but chaos. And so it kind of, you know, an outline's an outline, but a good outline is what you're after. So whatever works. And you know, you talk about moving suspense along and keeping the stories tight and good and stuff. I like to do this goofy kind of test where I'll just pick up the manuscript and I'll open it to page 30, page 408, page 310, whatever it is, just anywhere, and read what's in front of me. And if that has to be good. I want it to be interesting on a sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph, line by line reading. And if I find myself open, you know, to a place and I read, you know, half a page of, you know, 412, and my heart kind of sinks and with boredom, it's like, what? I mean, why should I put my reader through that? Then I'll fix it and I'll get rid of it and I'll give it something better, so that I want each sentence and each page to be a strong literary experience for my reader. I don't want to give them a bunch of fat that they have to cut through or wade through to get to the good stuff. Like Elmore Leonard said, leave the stuff out that people don't read anyway. I try to do that, you know.
Jeff, do you do any reading out loud?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't. I hear it in my head though.
Yeah.
Glenn, I do. Do you actually?
Yeah, that's a big part of my process. I think it's the same. It's the way I approach what you were talking about, you know, you find the boring parts by, if I'm reading it out loud and I'm bored by what I'm reading, it's a good indication, you know, that I need to modify it.
Yeah. Well, you know, it shows that you do that because where it shows, and when you don't do that is in dialogue. Like I'm always surprised when I read these books and the sentence or something that a living person would actually have to take a breath in the middle of it. They're so long, you know. But if you're reading it to yourself, you get that. So you go, okay, put the period there, shave that there, and give me 3 sentences instead of this thing that goes on and on. So yeah.
Yeah, the biggest advantage, I think, in addition to finding the boring parts, is variation of voices, as you say, to make sure that every character is not sounding exactly the same. I know your characters are fantastic at that. About they have very distinct, different voices in the way they talk.
I love that.
Which is why I was sort of curious about whether you read out loud, because that's a definite way to catch that. But I have a theater and playwriting background to a certain.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well, that's the way to learn.
It helps. It helps.
I always think
when it's all.
I always think of my characters walking. When he walks into the book, he's walking in onto a stage, and you probably think that automatically with your training.
A little bit. I think I need to get more like you though, because synopses for the publisher are the bane of my existence. I'm just, they drive me crazy.
What's the bane?
The synopses for the publisher.
Oh yeah.
Writing a synopsis, because inevitably they ask for one before I fully crafted out where it's going, and so I'm sort of making it up as I go. You know, they'll want a synopsis of a year or more in advance, and I'm like, I don't know what happens in Act 2
Yeah,
yet.
that's tough.
I'm still figuring that out.
Yeah.
We do have a question from the comments that I'm going to interject here. Let's see. Lisa asks, how do you deal with writer's block?
Jeff?
Well, you know, I'll tell you exactly how I deal with it. I stay in the chair. When I was younger, I thought that the way to deal with writer's block was to take a break, you know, open the door, go fishing, but it's not. The way to get through a writer's block is to stay in the seat and stare at the screen and look for what is wrong with what you're looking at, because something is wrong when you don't know what's going to happen next. And that's what writer's block is. And the reason you don't know what's going to happen next is because you have not fully appreciated the consequences of what has gone before. You don't quite understand what is going to happen next because you have written it, but you don't know what the consequences are. And often the solving of the problem is very simple and very clear as you go back and you see, here, obviously what I wrote here on page 56 would have had resounding consequences that here I am on page 64 and I haven't even mentioned it. So it's always something that you've done incompletely, and you'll see it if you sit there and read back, you know, and then go fishing and then correct it.
That is a great note. I'm going to try that, because I agree very strongly that when I'm blocked, when I'm stuck as to what somebody says next or what happens next, it's because I haven't thought about it enough. It's because I don't know what happens next. If I know what happens next, great. I'm barreling on through. I'm excited about it. But if I don't know, it's because I haven't thought about it enough. I have never thought to go back and reread the last 20 pages or so. That's a great technique. If I'm really stuck, what I've typically done is I'll set it aside and I will jump ahead to a scene I know is coming. Like I said, I have milestones and things like that. Like, it's like, okay, once he has this conversation with the lawyer, he's got to go break into this hotel room. And I know that's coming. So I will just go ahead and start writing that in order to make some progress and let my subconscious noodle on the lawyer problem. But I kind of like that idea of, rather than jumping ahead, backing up and rereading what's previous.
Yeah, I like the jumping ahead idea that you came up with too. And that's a good use of time, because when you literally are stuck and you don't know what's going to happen in the next chapter, but you do know what's going to happen 3 chapters in from there,
Right.
Why not take advantage and because you're right about the subconscious mind in the writer, in all of us, you know, it does work on, it chews on things when we're not aware of it. And sooner or later, if you're stubborn enough, which all writers are, your subconscious will figure it out and the answer will become clear and you'll go, oh yeah, of course, should have done it that way.
So speaking of fishing or spending time to think, I'm sure that you guys get tired of answering this question, but our customers, and myself included, find it always fascinating what your daily writing routine looks like. How about Glen goes first? Sure.
Daily writing routine, depending upon the day, is I will tend to write early and I will tend to write late. I still do have a day job. So that's part of my life. But I'll oftentimes write or do plotting early in the day. I find my brain's really clear early in the day for solving problems. That works out well. And then if I'm on a roll, I'll stay up late writing as well. I'll kind of split shift it. On the weekends, I'll typically, especially if I'm on deadline, I will write all day and well into the evening. I often write in sprints. I'll do like 45 to 50-minute sprints and take a 10-minute break when the time's right, just to move around, do some push-ups, whatever, just to move the body a little bit, and then come back to it along the way. That's typically, that's my most common routine when I'm on deadline.
How about you, Jeff?
That's cool. I'm methodical. I'm Monday through Friday. I'm in the office by 7:15, 7:30. It's a little building that's outside of my home, but on the property. So my commute each morning is with my cup of coffee is 75 steps from the front door of my house to my little metal building where I work. Monday through Friday, and I don't work on weekends or holidays anymore. I used to a little bit. You know, and I work all day. I knock off at 4, 5, 6, whenever the work day is done. I'm not writing the whole time, of course. There's lunch, there's, you know, life that you need to do, things you need to do. But basically, I work Monday through Friday, and I have a personal goal that I've had for years, and it's 5 pages a day. It's sort of a game I play with myself. Is I tell myself I got to get 5 pages today. And, you know, if I get 6, then that means I got to get 4 tomorrow because I want 25 pages at the end of the week. And it's this kind of funny, goofy accounting game, you know, pages and pluses and minuses that I play with myself to sort of keep me on beam a little bit. And 25 pages a week is actually a lot. I mean, that's yeah, it's 100 pages in a month, roughly. And so that's my goal. And if I happen to get a 7-page day, I'm ecstatic. And if I get a 2-page day, I'm grumbly and I have to hit the typewriter extra hard the next day to make up for it. So that's what I do. I'm best in the morning. I love the mornings. You know, I don't read the paper and online. I don't look at email. I don't do anything. I come right in. I got my coffee. I go right to the Word file, and it says, "Pick up where you left off," and that's where I go. And that's what I do in the morning when I'm clear, just out of the dreams and stuff. And I'm really kind of scarcely awake in some ways, but I can enter that story really easily in that state of mind. And the story becomes my world for a while. And the hours can go by kind of quickly when you're lost to it. It's fun. It's not, I'm sure, you know, you would agree, Glenn, you know, writing sometimes is really exciting and really fun. Not always. Sometimes it's the opposite of that. But I think one of the things that keeps us going is when you crack off a really good line or a good paragraph, or you finish that chapter and it just sings. It's a good feeling, and the writing inspires you to do better and to do more.
Very good. I don't do pages, but I do a word count, which is very similar. Like for weekdays, I have particular word count. Weekends, particular. If I'm on deadline, I'll write as much as I need to if I'm pressed. But generally speaking, along the way, the word count is a good way to go because it encourages me to stay in the seat. And the pages are probably the same for you, I'm guessing, too, along the way. So.
Yep.
Now, once you've reached your word count or you reach your page count, are those pretty final, and then that will make your draft, and then you go back and revise, or do you start each morning with the day before's pages, reading them?
I generally just continue on from where I've written, and then do at least 1 or 2 rewrites normally before it's delivered to the publisher along the way. It's just that's just the way I write. But I do tend to edit some as I go. I'm not a complete sprint writer where I'll just spew out the words along the way. I'll tend to re-edit as I go. I'll go, well, that's a long paragraph. What can we do for that? And, you know, clean stuff up or shorten it along the way. So my natural way of writing is relatively clean to begin with. So that does help.
Yeah. I try to make those 5 pages as good as I can. And if I don't like them, then I don't print them. They don't count. I just delete them. I mean, so some days, you know, I'll have a negative page count. You know, if I deleted 3 of yesterday's pages because they're not working, now I'm in the whole 3. But you know, more to the point though, I think, you know, I try to make those 5 good, and I try to make that first draft good. And I do edit a little bit as I go along. And sometimes I need to read back in order to get the scent that morning where I am. But basically, if I'm right in the middle of a scene, which is where I like to leave off, right in the middle of a sentence sometimes, I can get right back into that pretty quick. So, you know, at the end of the 6 months or 9 months or whatever it takes to finish this draft, I have something that I think is really, really strong and really, really clean and really, really good until, you know, my wife, my agent, and my editor read it, and I get all these notes and I realize that I have a lot more work to do. And that's okay. That's what writing is.
I think that if we have any aspiring writers watching this evening, they've hit the jackpot with all sorts of practical tips to try. That's for sure. So I had an idea of where I was on this page, and now I don't know where it is. Oh, I do. So what has been your favorite book to write? Not necessarily the finished product, but what has been the most fun book to write?
Take it away, Glenn.
I mean, always the current one you're working on is almost always the most exciting because you're you're grappling with it. You're really in the thick of it along the way. I had a really great time writing Mercy River, which was the fourth one in the series along the way, largely because it was the first one where Van branched out of Seattle a bit, and it was a very different locale in the high plains of Oregon. And so a lot of the book was set there, and also a very different milieu of being in a small town, essentially invaded by a huge military veterans rally along the way. And that was a lot of fun to write just because it was really different. I'm having a lot of fun with this current one, number 6, because it's the first one I've written in third person. So I'm jumping out of Van's head into the heads of other characters for brief snippets to set up trouble for him, but also to get hints of other characters and writing in different voices. So that's a lot of fun too. I like to write a little scared, honestly. I like to write, try things I haven't tried before, mess around with structure, play with it. And if that's usually a sign that what I'm writing will be hopefully as exciting to the reader as it is to me. Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to ask how that was treating you. So I think the writing scared gives a little of that away.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's treating me well enough that I've stuck with it for, what's almost a finished manuscript now. So we'll see.
How about you, Jeff?
No, that's a good answer. It reminds me of mine. I think of all the books that I've written, some have been joyful to write, and others have been very tough. I think the ongoing, joy of discovery in me was California Girl. It's a big, sprawling book. It's long for me. It's 40 years. It's about a homicide that's incorrectly solved for 40 years. It's a family saga. It's a lot of things. It's a big, complex book, multi-viewpoint characters and all. And I sat down to outline that thing as you would think that you'd want to do with something that complicated and that long. And I applied myself as best I could for a day on the outline, and then I quit. I couldn't get started. I couldn't get my head around how I would structure that book. I had a loose structure in my head, but I didn't think I could outline in any kind of meaningful detail. All I could do was put words on the paper that would be blather, and there was no way to predict a book that big. So the next day, I just started writing. I thought of a good opening line and a good tone, and I sort of knew my characters, and I started writing, and I wrote that whole 600-page manuscript basically improvisationally, without any respect or regard for how complicated it was. I just made it up as I went along, and I kept the story moving. And when I felt like I had to go forward, I went forward. And if I had to go back, I went back. And if it was time to switch characters, I switched characters. And at the end of the day, I had a really workable, nice first draft that was in remarkably good shape and not one outline. So back to anybody who's listening, who's a writer, wants to be a writer, don't ever be afraid to put the words on the paper and on the monitor and put the pedal to the metal and go forward with your writing, with your story, because that's how you're going to find it a lot of the times. And for me, California Girl is an example of that. The book that I'm working on right now is just popping in my imagination like crazy. I think about it all the time. As soon as I get done at work, I'm still thinking about it. I love it. I'm having a great time with it. It's an immersive world. It's not right the here and now. It's moving back in time to a world that I experienced as a 14-year-old. So there's a whole sense of wonder to this manuscript that I don't always have. And so anyway, California Girl is my pick for having fun at the typewriter.
And as if we had this question planned, you've got it on the wall behind you in case anyone should care. It's right there. Okay, so we have another question from Lisa, but I have the exact same question in my notes. So hers is which authors inspired your writing? Mine is a little more specific. Are there any books that set you on the path to being the writer that you are today?
Many. Van's probably most direct influence is Travis McGee from the John D. MacDonald series, mostly because I've always liked characters that scrounge a living at the outskirts of polite society. And McGee is very definitely that. Of course, I grew up on a boat and McGee lives aboard a boat. So it was almost required reading to read that series as a kid. I think the one that when looking back when I read it, I just went, wow, because it struck me as literature as well as mystery, was Gorky Park by Martin Smith, which is just and still is an amazing novel, an amazing character, but it's just such a powerful story, not only about the mystery itself and the individuals involved, but you don't even realize how much of a love story it is until the final pages about that he's been leading up to this the entire time. That one is still a gut punch when I read it. So that was really affecting in saying that, a mystery can have tremendous emotional impact along with a really good story.
Yeah. How about you, Jeff?
I've been hugely influenced and inspired by many, many, many books as you have, Glenn. I think one that sticks in mind, though, story I like to tell is when I was a sophomore in high school, I took a mythology and folklore class, and we were a bunch of just average students, sort of brats in the class, and the teacher was this young, lovely, educated woman who really wanted to teach us mythology and folklore. And I just took it because I thought it'd be easy, and we misbehaved so badly. One day she brought a box of paperbacks from her garage to class. And she said, I'm not going to teach you mythology and folklore today. I'm going to make you come up silently in single file line and close your eyes and choose a book out of this box and take it back and read it in silence. And if you don't do that, I'm going to send you to the assistant principal. So when it was my turn, I stood in line and grumbled and closed my eyes and put my hand into the box and pulled out a tattered copy of Joseph Heller's Catch-22. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know Joseph Heller from Adam. I took it back to my desk, though, and started reading. And I started, kind of laughing, chuckling to myself a little bit. And I couldn't put that book down. And I read it straight through. It took me 2 weeks. I'm a slow reader. And I read that book every spare second I had. And at the end of when I had finished reading Catch-22, I felt like a gigantic sliding glass door had been opened in my room and fresh air was blowing in because it was so subversive. It was so different. It was so funny. It was so about the world and so dark at the same time and so funny. I love that book. And I don't write anything like Joseph Heller. I've never even tried to. But as far as inspiration goes, that book opened my eyes, and it quite simply made me wonder if I could do something like that someday. It was monkey see, monkey do, literally, and it's a great book.
Fantastic. Speaking of reading, who are some of your current favorite authors, and what have you read lately? I can't talk, I'm sorry, I'm tired. What have you read lately that you've loved?
Let's see, I read a bunch for some articles I was writing, blog posts I was writing as part of the book launch. I read The Marsh King's Daughter, amazing thriller, a couple of years ago, Karen Dion's thriller. I read Lightwood by Steph Post. That was wonderful. I'm currently reading Shed No Tears, which is the latest from Kaz Freer in the Kat Kinsella series. Love those. They're very reminiscent of Mark Billingham, whom I'm a huge fan of as well, for the British police procedurals and serial killer stories, and very dark, wonderful things. I haven't thoroughly engaged with it yet, but I've started reading These Women by
Ivy Pacoda.
Ivy Pacoda. I'm sort of waiting on that one until I'm done drafting this manuscript, because I know once I get into it, it's going to interrupt a lot of my time. So I'm waiting on that one. And there's this book I just got in the mail last week. So I've been working. I just started this one as well, and I've already learned a lot about scorpions, and I'm learning more. So yeah.
How about you, Jeff?
Oh gosh, I read kind of widely and in a disorganized fashion. I read in genre, out of genre, history, sociology, whatever it might be. Right this minute, trying to think what I've got open that's interesting. I just started in on Don Winslow's Broken collection of novellas. It's really good. No surprise. I like You know, I like contemporary American crime fiction. I thought American Dirt was pretty cool. Thought it was good. And I don't know, nothing has really jumped out at me lately as being, you know, super great. But you know, I'm always reading something, and when I get immersed in a book like, you know, Broken or American Dirt, I grind through it really as fast as I can because I really feel myself entertained. You know, when one of the things that inspires me more than any other as a writer is writing, and it's always been that way. And I get my biggest artistic kicks, I think, from writing. I mean, music is awesome and art is awesome and it's all great, but for me, you know, the peak emotional artistic experience for me is as a reader and reading a piece of literature that I love, you know. And so I'll go back and read what I love, you know. For example, 1980 something, late 70s, Jim Harrison wrote Legends of the Fall, which is 3 novellas under one cover. And I read all 3 of those once a year because they're so absolutely good in every way. And I feel nourished and added to when I read books of that quality. So, you know, I'll read that. I'll read a Chandler novel every year. You know, I'll reread Joseph Heller's Catch-22, and I have, you know, I'll reread Shakespeare. So, you know, whatever just really gets me excited, I'll go back and deal with it. And I feel that it's kind of like my vitamins, my literary vitamins, when I'm reading something that's really good.
So you mentioned Catch-22 again, and we have I think a great question from the comments. George would like to know if that teacher knows how much that book influenced you.
I hope so. You know, I tell that her name is Miss Page, and I've told that Miss Page story to hundreds and hundreds of people over the years, and she's always the star. And but you know, I've never been able to track her down, and I don't know where she is. I'm in touch with other high school teachers that I had who were really influential too, but she's not one of them. But if she's listening to this, she probably would remember that class. We were terrible, and she brought those paperback books in to silence us for 45 minutes because she was sick of putting up with us. And I'll bet you she would remember. That would be 1970, Tustin Union High School, my sophomore year, mythology and folklore.
All right, Facebook, do your thing. Let's find Miss Page.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, I think that's actually a delightful story to end on. I'd like to thank both of you so much for joining me this evening to do this talk. I wish we could have you in store in person, but these virtual events have been kind of a blessing in that we still get to talk to people, and some of whom we wouldn't actually see in person. So hopefully we'll get to see you both in store next year. I can't wait to read your 1960s book or the next Van Shaw. I think we have virtual events every night this week. So if you're catching us on Facebook, I don't even know where to start, but they're coming fast and furious, 7 o'clock each night. So tune in and certainly take a minute to take a look at these authors' books. We've got A Dangerous Breed and Then She Vanished by T. Jefferson Parker and Glen Erik Hamilton. Thank you so much. You guys have a great evening.
Thanks, McKenna. Good
Great
seeing you.
you.
Good to see you too. Bye.
Bye.